AITA for kicking my husband and MIL out of the delivery room after they disrespected me. I, 27F, gave birth to my first child about 8 weeks ago, and I've been trying to figure out if I was too harsh during my labor. My husband, 29M, and I have been together for a few years, and things were pretty good between us before this whole birth situation. But I'm feeling really conflicted about everything that happened, and now our relationship feels like it's falling apart. A little backstory on my pregnancy. It wasn't easy. I had placenta previa, which made the pregnancy high risk, and I was on bed rest for a while. It was a tough few months, but I made it to 37 weeks, and I was relieved to finally be nearing the end of this challenging journey. Now, onto the actual delivery situation. The day I went into labor, I called my mom and told her, and my husband called his mom, MIL, Dan, and I had already agreed that it would just be the two of us in the delivery room, no extra people. I felt strongly about this because I wanted it to be an intimate experience, just me and my husband. But then, when I was in labor and things were starting to intensify, I was shocked to see my MIL arrive at the hospital. She came in with a big smile and said she came to help. I was caught off guard because, again, my husband and I had already agreed it would be just the two of us. I told her politely that I wasn't comfortable with her being there and explained that it was a decision Dan and I had made together. She wasn't having it, though. She said she'd traveled all this way, so it would be rude to make her leave. At that point, I called my mom to come to the hospital because there's a rule at the hospital limiting the number of people allowed in the delivery room to 2. I figured if I had to have one extra person in the room, I'd rather have my mom there. When my mom arrived, I spoke with the nurses and told them that only my husband and my mom would be allowed in the room. That way, there would be no confusion or arguing about it. My MIL absolutely lost it. She started saying I was excluding her from the birth of her grandchild and accused me of being selfish. She said she'd always wanted to witness a birth, especially her son's child, and I was taking that moment away from her. She made a huge scene, and I was feeling so stressed and overwhelmed. My mom, tried to avoid further conflict, said she would sit in the waiting room and pray for us while MIL stayed in the room. But this is where it started to get really messy. As my labor progressed, things were getting more intense. I was doing everything I could to stay calm, but then I saw my husband, Dan, holding his phone and recording me. He was filming me while I was in labor, which completely threw me off. I calmly asked him to stop and told him that I wasn't comfortable being recorded. He didn't listen and kept filming, even when the nurse came in to check how dilated I was. I told him again that this wasn't okay with me, and he responded by saying, "Since my mom can't be here, I'll record everything for her so she won't feel left out." I was livid. I felt humiliated and violated. When it came time for me to start pushing, Dan was still recording me with his phone. It was invasive, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I told the nurse to take his phone away and stop any filming, but he said I was ruining the moment. I finally snapped and screamed at him to get out of the room. He wasn't respecting my boundaries, and I was done. A nurse escorted Dan out of the room, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I wasn't going to let anyone disrespect me in such a vulnerable moment. Fast forward to after the birth. When I was moved to recovery, Dan still hadn't shown up. He didn't come for hours, even though I kept calling him. When he finally arrived, he was furious. He said I was selfish for kicking him and his mom out of the delivery room and that I had excluded him from the birth of his son. He was hurt, and so was his mom. They both felt like I ruined their moment of witnessing their grandchild being born. I explained to him how frustrated I was about the recording and how his mom didn't respect my boundaries when I had clearly communicated them. He didn't seem to care and instead focused on how hurt he was about being excluded. It felt like he wasn't understanding my perspective at all. To make matters worse, Dan hasn't been coming around much. I'm currently staying in my parents' house because when we were discharged from the hospital, he didn't even bother to pick us up. It's been a few weeks, and he hasn't even bothered to check in on me or our son. He's tried to get our son to sleep over at his house, but I'm exclusively breastfeeding and I don't want him to get used to the bottle. I've tried talking to him about moving back into our house, but he says there's a lot we need to work through first. Here's the thing, my dad went over to the house to talk to Dan man to man, but when he got there, Dan wasn't even home. At this point, I feel so hurt and unsupported. Before all of this, Dan was a pretty decent husband, and I thought we were a team. But right now, it feels like he's choosing his mom's feelings over mine, and that's not okay with me. I'm just feeling really lost. I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable. Was I too harsh, kicking Dan and his mom out of the delivery room? Should I have just let things go? I'm honestly wondering if I've made a huge mistake here. AITA for doing what I did.